the cameras flashed, the crowd froze. And just like that, Hollywood had a new obsession.
They really did.
Right. But I want you to picture this. A teenage girl steps onto a yacht, surrounded by the vast open ocean. She feels, completely safe.
Because she's with a friend.
Exactly.
All right.
She's with a trusted friend, someone she literally considers a protector in a notoriously cutthroat industry. But then the door to a small private cabin opens.
Oh, man.
And suddenly the trap is sprung. There's nowhere to run. There's nowhere to swim. And honestly, the worst part, the cameras aren't rolling.
Yeah, nobody's watching.
Hollywood had its golden girl. But behind that sparkling smile was a terrifying secret she would keep buried for over a decade.
When you look at the mechanics of what actually occurred in that room, it fundamentally rewrites how we understand the infrastructure of celebrity protection. It's a scenario that relies entirely on isolation.
Absolutely. Welcome to Starscope Report, where we uncover Hollywood drama, music industry shakeups, and viral influencer scandals. From red carpet surprises to social media controversies, we dive deep into the stories behind the fame.
We do. And today's story is a heavy one.
It is. Today, we are answering a question that has been, quietly circulating in industry back channels for a long time. What happened to Hayden Panettiere at 18 that she kept secret for years?
That's a huge question.
We're unpacking her memoir, This Is Me, a reckoning, alongside her recent interviews, to finally look at the truth behind those relentless tabloid headlines.
And we are really looking at a narrative that was hijacked by the media for so long. Like, she is finally taking the pen back. But to understand the secret she kept at 18, I have to look at the machinery that built her.
Right, the early days. I always look at the architecture of early child stardom, like building a glittering multi-million-dollar mansion on a foundation of quicksand.
That's a perfect way to put it.
From the outside, the house looks amazing. It's aspirational. But underneath, there is absolutely no solid ground. And without a foundation, a collapse isn't just a possibility. It's, a structural inevitability.
Yeah, let's examine that foundation. Because her career didn't start when she was a teenager. She was placed into the industry at 8 months old.
Wait, 8 months?
8 months.
That's, right before she could even form a conscious memory. She was already a working product.
Totally.
And the manager of that product was her mother. I want to pause on this for a second because think about how this plays out in your own life. Like, imagine if your relationship with your parents was entirely dictated by your quarterly performance reviews at work.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's brutal.
Right. If you missed a deadline, you didn't just get a stern talking to from a boss. You literally risked losing your mother's affection.
Well, and it creates this profound psychological enmeshment. A child in that environment isn't really seeking a parent's comfort. They are seeking a manager's approval.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Hayden talked about how after every single take on a set, she wouldn't look at the director.
Really?
No, she would look straight past them to find her mother, just terrified of being in trouble if she didn't hit her mark perfectly.
That is so much pressure for a kid.
Her entire life revolved around the corporation of Hayden. She recalls her mom explaining that the family's cars and cell phones were corporate tax write-offs.
I have to wonder, though, how much of that is malicious on the mother's part and how much is just the reality of an industry that demands families restructure themselves around a child breadwinner?
That's a really good point.
The system practically requires a parent to become a ruthless manager if they want their kid to survive Hollywood.
Yeah, that is a very fair distinction. The industry heavily incentivizes the commodification of the child.
Mm-hmm.
But, regardless of the mother's initial intent, the impact on the child's developing brain is exactly the same.
Right. The damage is still done.
Exactly. You have a young girl who is the financial pillar of her entire family, yet she is completely powerless.
And the emotional toll of that powerlessness, it really peaked when she was 19. This is when she was starring on the massive hit show Heroes.
She was everywhere back then.
Literally everywhere. And she finally mustered the courage to try and separate the business from their personal relationship.
Which is huge.
Yeah. She went into her trailer, sat her mom down, and said, "I don't want us to work together anymore. I just want you to be my mom."
And her mother's response was to look at her and say, "You owe me," and just walk out.
You owe me. That phrase alone is such a heavy burden for a teenager. But it wasn't just emotional conditioning happening here. There was physical, chemical conditioning happening too.
Yeah, this part of the story is just wild.
When Hayden was just 15 years old, A trusted member of her team handed her what they literally called happy pills to help her survive the grueling red carpet press tours.
At 15.
Yeah, 15. And it was a substance very similar to Adderall.
And she just took them without questioning it.
Huh.
And, I mean, why? Because her internal danger detection system had never been allowed to develop.
Right, she was trained to just obey.
Exactly. Her entire existence was about compliance. She studied scripts for 12 to 20 hours a day. She was totally isolated from her peers. She was even bullied by her own teachers.
Wait, her teacher?
Yeah, one substitute mockingly called her the big cheese in front of the whole class.
Ah, that's awful. It really reminds me of overclocking a computer processor.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, you have this 15-year-old girl, and the team around her is just pumping in these happy pills to make her run faster, smile brighter, and endure these impossible hours.
Right.
And on the outside, the machine looks incredibly efficient. It's generating millions. But internally, the motherboard is quietly melting down.
Yes, that is exactly it. And when you continually override a child's natural exhaustion with stimulants, you're basically teaching them that their body's signals just don't matter.
That they can't trust themselves.
Right. Their intuition is flawed. The adults always know best.
Which perfectly sets the stage for the terrifying incident at 18. Because when you spend 15 years having your internal alarms silenced, you don't realize you're walking into a trap until the door locks behind you.
No, you don't.
And that's exactly what happened. But wait till you hear what came next.
This is really the moment that completely redefines the trajectory of her life. She is 18. She's living this massive life. She's on billboards worldwide. And, she believes she is navigating the world as an adult.
Biologically, though, she really isn't.
Not at all.
Let's look at the headline event here, the betrayal on the boat. So, Hayden is invited onto a yacht by a female friend, and I really want to emphasize that detail for you all listening.
It's a really important detail.
It is. This wasn't a stereotypical sleazy executive cornering her in a hallway. This was a woman she explicitly trusted.
And that is a crucial mechanism of how predation works in these high-power circles. Predators rarely operate in a vacuum. They use intermediaries, often women, often trusted confidants, to disarm young talent. It completely bypasses whatever meager security systems the victim might have left. Like, you trust your friend, so you trust the environment your friend brings you into.
Exactly. So this female friend leads Hayden down into a small, private cabin on the boat. And there, she physically puts Hayden into a bed next to a very famous, completely undressed, older man.
It's just sickening.
It is. And Hayden noted that the man acted like this was just an average Tuesday. The expectation was that a young, famous teenager being delivered to his bed was just standard operating procedure.
I mean, the entitlement required to act like that is staggering. It really highlights how normalized the commodification of young women was, and honestly still is in those circles.
For sure.
But the fascinating part to me is her physiological response.
Yeah.
Because despite a lifetime of being conditioned to comply to make the adults happy, her lion instinct just kicked in. She said her hair stood on end. She bolted out of that bed.
She just ran. She hid elsewhere on the yacht. But, think about the logistics of that terror.
Oh, it's a nightmare.
You are hiding, but you are literally out to sea. You can't call an Uber. You can't run out the back door into an alleyway. And as she hid, she realized there wasn't a single empathetic ally on that vessel.
Nobody.
The crew, the friend, the older man, to everyone else, this was normal.
This perfectly illustrates the insidious nature of Hollywood power dynamics. In her memoir, Hayden actually reflects on the fact that her frontal lobes weren't fully developed yet.
Right, the brain science of it.
Yeah, the prefrontal cortex, which governs long-term risk assessment and complex decision-making, it doesn't finish developing until your mid-20s. She literally lacked the neurological hardware to fully assess the dangers of the environment she was placed in.
Wow.
Yet the industry willfully exploited her perceived maturity.
Exactly. It's like handing a teenager the keys to a speeding sports car, but you've secretly removed the brakes.
That's such a good analogy.
Right. The industry gave her the access, the fame, and the financial pressure of a 30-year-old, but she still had the developmental vulnerability of a teenager. They treated her like an adult when it benefited their bottom line, but expected the naive, silent compliance of a child when they wanted to exploit her.
And because she couldn't process the sheer magnitude of that betrayal at 18, she just buried it. She went back to work.
She just kept going. And if you're gripped by the mechanics of these hidden Hollywood truths, make sure you're subscribed, because the way this unresolved trauma manifested next is one of the most brutal examples of an industry exploiting its own talent.
It really is.
Yeah.
The blurring of reality and fiction that happens in her 20s is where the psychological endurance test really begins.
Yeah, this is the Nashville era.
Right. She lands the role of Juliet Barnes on the hit show Nashville.
She's playing this massive country music star. But as Hayden's real life begins to unravel with severe postpartum depression and attempts to self-medicate with alcohol, the writers of Nashville start taking those exact real-life struggles and writing them into the script for her character.
I mean, the psychology of that is incredibly damaging. Your brain doesn't always differentiate between performed trauma and real trauma when the physiological responses are identical.
That makes total sense.
You are dealing with a profound, terrifying disconnect after the birth of your child, and you are quietly suffering from addiction. Then you go to work for 12 to 20 hours a day, and your employer demands that you perform your own private agony for the cameras.
But wait, to play devil's advocate for a second, isn't that just acting? Like, drawing on personal experience to fuel a performance is a cornerstone of the craft, right? Writers observe their actors all the time and tailor the characters to them.
Well, yes, but there is a massive difference between an actor choosing to draw on a past experience to inform a scene and a network actively strip mining an actor's current unresolved medical crisis for television ratings.
Ah, current versus past.
Exactly. She says she didn't know where Juliet began and Hayden ended. She couldn't process her grief because she was contractually obligated to perform it.
That makes a lot of sense. It's the difference between consensual artistry and just blatant corporate exploitation.
100%.
And the public fallout of that exploitation was vicious. She eventually sought treatment at a facility, but let's look at how the corporate machine reacted. She had been the face of Neutrogena for 10 years. And on a live morning show, completely unscripted, she spoke honestly about suffering from postpartum depression.
And Neutrogena fired her. They cited a morals clause in her contract.
I really struggle with the logic here. A morals clause is traditionally designed to protect a brand if a spokesperson commits a crime or does something genuinely scandalous.
Right, like a huge controversy.
Yeah. How does a medical condition that affects millions of mothers trigger a morals clause?
It's disgusting. It reveals a deeply rooted, archaic stigma against maternal mental health. The expectation is that motherhood is endlessly glowing and perfect.
No room for humanity.
None. The moment a woman, especially a famous woman whose brand is built on sparkling perfection, admits she is drowning, she is deemed immoral by the corporate structure and discarded.
Which completely primed the media to tear her apart over her custody choice. Recognizing how unwell she was, Hayden made the agonizing decision to let her young daughter, Kaya, live in Europe with her ex, Vladimir Klitschko.
Such a hard choice.
Unbelievably hard. It wasn't an abandonment. She needed to get sober, and she refused to let her daughter be collateral damage in her fight for survival.
But the tabloids, they didn't care about the nuance of a mother saving her child from her own instability.
Of course not.
Magazine covers just screamed about her giving up her daughter. They completely ignored the fact that the child was safe, thriving, and surrounded by family in Europe.
Think about the absolute mind-bending reality she is living in at this point. Her workplace is exploiting her pain for profit, her corporate sponsors are firing her for being honest about a medical condition, and the media is rewriting her desperate survival tactics as moral failures.
When every external mirror is reflecting a distorted, monstrous version of yourself, you lose your grip on your own reality. You start to believe the narrative.
And unfortunately, that vulnerability leaves the door wide open for even darker elements to enter. She thought stepping away to heal would finally bring her peace.
But it didn't.
No. Later in the deep dive, we'll talk about the shocking twist nobody saw coming. A real-life horror story that made the paparazzi look tame.
Predators have an absolute sixth sense for vulnerability. When someone is isolated, grieving, and completely disconnected from their own instincts, they become a prime target for abuse.
And the sheer volume of consecutive crises Hayden faced next is staggering. She enters a relationship with Brian Hickerson, which quickly devolves into severe domestic violence.
It was incredibly dark.
She described a terrifying Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde dynamic fueled by alcohol. 1 minute they're dancing, and the next, a switch flips, his eyes go vacant, and it's like a completely different person is in the room. He eventually went to jail for the abuse.
What stands out in her memoir is her retrospective analysis of why she stayed. She shared a journal entry where she realized she was tolerating the abuse because she was more afraid of being alone than she was of being abused.
Wow. That is so brutally honest.
She noted how abusers weave themselves into your life like weeds. They slowly intertwine with your finances, your living situation, your daily habits, making extraction incredibly painful.
I really want to push back on the common question people always ask in these situations. You always hear, why didn't she just leave?
Right, the victim blaming.
Exactly. But if you look at her entire life's programming, it makes complete sense why she stayed. It's like being trapped on a psychological hamster wheel.
Oh, how so?
Well, when you have been trained since you were an infant to fix people, to mold your behavior to make adults happy, and to perform perfectly to earn love leaving an abuser, feels like failing a role you were cast to play.
That is exactly the mechanism of a trauma bond. You convince yourself, if I just perform better, if I am just more forgiving, I can extract the good person hidden underneath.
You think you have the power to change them.
Right. And the breakthrough only happens when you realize the good person was actually just the bait.
And as if surviving domestic violence wasn't enough, she is simultaneously hit with an avalanche of unimaginable grief. She loses her beloved younger brother Jansen to addiction.
Jansen was her grounding wire. He really was.
She's the only one who got it.
He was the only person on the planet who truly understood the chaotic pressure cooker reality of their shared upbringing. When you lose the one witness to your childhood, you lose a massive part of your own tether to reality.
And to compound that grief, during this exact same period of mourning and isolation, she becomes the target of a severe, unhinged stalker.
This part is terrifying.
We aren't talking about a persistent fan sending too many letters. We are talking about a deeply unwell individual leaving messages threatening decapitation with a katana sword. He was actually showing up in the cities where she had speaking engagements.
It escalated to the point where the FBI and the Secret Service had to intervene and put him away.
Right.
Like, just layer those experiences for a moment.
It's too much.
You are trying to process the death of your brother, recovering from severe domestic abuse, battling for your own sobriety, and having to look over your shoulder for a literal assassin.
The compounding weight of that trauma is almost incomprehensible. Stay tuned and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next, because the way she navigated out of this storm is incredible.
It really is a story of resilience. After being directed, managed, and controlled by everyone else for 3 decades, she is finally sitting in the director's chair of her own life.
At 36 years old, Hayden Panettiere is aggressively reclaiming her narrative. She recently came out as bisexual, explaining that she hid it for years because of the exhausting, suffocating pressure to be perfect for the cameras and the fear of being accused of just following a trend.
Which is so brave. And by writing this memoir, she is naming the abuse, the addiction, and the systemic exploitation that enabled it all. She described it as feeling an elephant step off her chest.
What a visual.
She isn't pretending everything is flawlessly resolved, because recovery rarely is, but she is setting boundaries and rebuilding an intentional relationship with her daughter on her own terms.
It leaves you with a lingering, uncomfortable question, though. Given how completely the media and the public misjudged Hayden Panettiere, demonizing her for a custody decision that saved her child, mocking her struggles, and completely ignoring the invisible battles she was fighting, how many other public figures are we currently villainizing who are simply trying to survive their own unwritten traumas?
It forces you to look at the machinery of fame differently. The next time a scandalous headline drops, we have to ask ourselves, what is happening in the rooms when the cameras aren't rolling?
You've been listening to Starscope Report, where Jordan and Jamie uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining.